everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon. Now, I was going to be doing a review of Season 3, Episode 4 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I've seen they had a new episode posted called Through the Lens of Time. And so I'm duty-bound to watch all new episodes of Star Trek. So I decided, well, I'll watch this episode and then do Season 3, Episode 4 afterwards. But this episode was kind of kick butt, and I wanted to talk about it because, look, there's very few things in Star Trek. Okay, first of all, spoilers. If you haven't seen Through the Lens of Time, please stop this video, go check it out, and come back and watch this video. But this video is going to contain spoilers because you guys know how I roll. So, look, what's going on in this episode is this. You got Corby, you got Nurse Chapel. They basically find out that there's this ancient civilization or ruins of an ancient civilization on this one planet. Now, on this one planet, we're introduced to a new type of species called the macaronis, or I'm sorry, the macroons, macadamias, no, the macroons, right? Interesting looking species. We didn't really get to go too much into them and, their civilization, culture, none of that kind of stuff. They had one representative that was kind of, being their guide for the away team when they came down to basically explore these ruins, because the macroons are interested in, hey, what's going on with our history? We like to know about our history, as to our culture and to understand all that kind of stuff. Anyway, Ortega's brother, who's assigned to the ship now, I guess on a limited basis, to be the newscaster, the reporter, he's documenting everything. He has this little floating device that he controls. It locks on to people's, emotions, heat, all that kind of stuff, right? We'll get into that later, why that's kind of important, why they brought that up. Anyway, now they beam down to this planet, man, and they go through the whole scenario of finding this ancient ruins and everything like that. And what unfolds basically is they get trapped inside this temple and they got to find a way out. Now, that was the synopsis in a nutshell. Now, let's get into it. Let's go into the episode in depth, because this episode was pretty interesting. Now, there's some things I wanted to cover right off the bat, because there's a lot of people that's going to be like, this episode got into the metaphysical, the religious, is there such thing as good and evil? That's not Star Trek. Star Trek is supposed to be technical, science-based, and all this kind of stuff. Oh, okay, so check this out, right? Those people would be wrong. Those people would be very wrong. Right off my head, I remember this episode called Skin of what? Evil. Skin of Evil, right? Anyway, so in that episode, you had this being called Armis. Armis even described himself as evil. All right. It's not the lone thing. Think of Feclor. Feclor is what? The ruler of Klingon hell, right? To have hell and to have Klingon heaven, right? Stovokor, you have to, be good or dishonorable, or honorable or dishonorable, right? Or good or bad, right? So these concepts are covered a lot in Star Trek canon. Let's not even get into Deep Space Nine, right? So let's set aside that myth right there. So in this episode, it's from kind of the perspective, the first part of the episode, of this ensign Gamble, right? And everybody know Ensign Gamble as the new nurse dude, that the young cat that they have helping Dr. M'Benga. He's kind of like M'Benga's protege, always happy, real good at his job. He's kind of like, all right. So we finally get to have an episode that kind of starts centered on him. Now, when I first started watching the episode and I noticed that it was starting to center on him, right, I got two thoughts. My first thought was, oh my God, please don't red shirt this dude, because every time you start going into one of the side characters, they start developing a story, especially in anime, right? Right. When a character is about in something, then they start going to the background and, the back flashbacks, so they hit, right, how they get, we already know that character is gone. So, but they start going into his perspective and, stuff like that, almost kind of treating it like a Data's Day. But the thing is that, that was the first thought that I had, that I hope they wasn't going to red shirt him, right? The second thought that I had was, wow, this dude reminds me of how I would be if I was in his situation. I would be so ecstatic. I would be wanting to do everything. I would be trying to gain the trust and admiration of my superiors if I existed on a starship in that century, right? Just the opportunity, just like he said, man, it's just to say Enterprise, on the Enterprise. It was just a cool thing, a flagship. Like, his excitement and eagerness just was awesome to me, right? So here's the thing. He gets chosen by Dr. Mbenga to go down on this away mission, like I said, to help Dr. Corby figure out these ruins, because he found a few artifacts on some other worlds that led him to this particular planet. Now, the leader of the away mission, for some strange reason, right, is Nurse Chapel. Now, the people going on the mission is also Uhura, which should outrank Nurse Chapel. Okay, you also have the reporter guy. Now, when they get down to the planet, you know, they looking around, they meet up with the Macroon, you know, representative. They talking about it and everything. And the first thought that I had when they beamed down to the world was, did they just beam down into SG-1? Because all of the containers and the water bottles and everything like that looked like they had just beamed down to one of Daniel Jackson's digs. And then right when that thought came up, they walked up to a pedestal that instantly reminded me of a DHD. But that's besides the point. It had this sphere on like this, it was, I guess, a trans-dimensional sphere or multi-dimensional sphere. Okay, it existed in different planes, and the reason why they was going down to this planet was because Dr. Corby was investigating eternal life. Now, the thing about that is that it was interesting because that is Dr. Corby's field. Transferring consciousness, all that kind of stuff, because that's how we was introduced to him in the episode. And I'm not gonna lie, when they beamed down to the planet and they start going into this ancient civilization, I was thinking to myself, did they discover Rook's world? How are they gonna fit this into canon? Because, you know, they're not really supposed to be here. Maybe this is how, Corby ended up on this world. And, maybe I was thinking that, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So they come up to the DHD and they, set up these equipment around it, and they use the tractor beam or the deflector shields to basically mine through the face of this mountain, and it uncovers a really interestingly designed. I'm not gonna lie, man. Whoever did the design of this temple, beautiful, right? It was a beautiful temple, but it was a huge temple. So much so that Nurse Chapel, calls up to the ship and like, hey, man, we're going to need a lot more people. We're going to need some extra away team. Anyway, so Spock ends up coming down. Of course, he's the science officer, right? And you have La'an comes down because, I got a crush on her. I got to see La'an. And basically, we end up with 6 members of the away team, all in their respective relationship things. Now, it's a side story going on, of course, with La'an and Spock, kind of hooking up and everything like that. And it's interesting because Nurse Chapel, it seemed like she was feeling a certain kind of way because Spock wasn't giving her attention that she was, kind of hoping for. And I was thinking to myself, Nurse Chapel, man, you kind of bogus. So instead, she gonna come and confront, La'an. Now, La'an is always gangster. La'an cut that stuff down quick. You mind yours, I mind mine. If you got something to, if you're wondering about Spock, since you're trying to question me, go ask Spock. Don't ask my neighbor, come to me. Don't be afraid. Anyway, so that's how La'an handled it. Like Jen stepped off, right? So they got this kind of tension. Well, Nurse Chapel got this kind of tension. Spock, he kind of over it, right? But again, Nurse Chapel kind of makes something out of it. All right. So, kind of find out you need blood to get up inside this temple, man. And for some strange reason, Nurse Chapel goes up there and just decides to do it. Now, one of the cool things, oh yeah, by the way, Nurse Bishop, Ensign Bishop beams down, and it's sad because Bishop has been in several, a couple of 3 episodes. And this is the first time I've realized what Bishop's name is. And for the likes of me, I don't remember them saying his name in the other episodes. Like I was thinking, okay, well, that's another reason why I thought they was going to red shirt him. They're not really going into this character too much, but I was hoping they, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Bishop is with him. Now, Bishop walks up to him. I'm cool. It was cool that they added this, man. He starts scanning her like, yo, you might have some pathogens or something, something sticking you. Anyway, so it scans her, right? The doors open. Everybody, including the Macroon guy, proceeds in. Now, the design of the inside of this temple, the CGI green screen, whatever you want to call it, beautifully done. I dug it. Now, here's the thing. They walk in and it's this pedestal sitting kind of like in this room across this bridge, and it's all kind of stuff like that. And it's not really a big pedestal. So I'm kind of surprised that that Bishop was the first person to see the dead bodies of the Macroons that they end up later finding out starved to death because they couldn't get out of this temple, right? Right. I'm surprised they didn't see that. So they all go, of course, this gets their attention. They scan it and everything like that. And La'an's like, yo, this is danger. We don't have communications. We should leave because nobody can transport us. It's against, protocol. And so Spock like, well, yeah, we should do that. Dude's like, what's his name? Corby. He's like, nah, man, we up inside this temple. And of course, Corby is an eccentric person. We inside this temple, man. We finna look around and do this stuff, right? And Spock not in charge. Chapel is, right? In which case, La'an got to remind him, no, man, since Spock beamed down, he's the senior officer, right? So Spock basically like, yo, Macroon dude, we on your world as far as invitation goes. What do you want us to do? The Macroon dude's like, well, yeah, I really would like for us to proceed and figure this out because we didn't even know this was here. This is part of our history, right? So they looking around trying to figure out what's going on, investigating, and the cameraman then sent his camera through the other doorway, right? It's all black, you can't see through it, sent it through the doorway. He comes back with an image that has the statue on the other side. They show it to the Macroon dude. He goes into this other language thing talking about, in which Uhura translates as, like evil, right? The Macroon dude tries to run out, of course, because if it's evil in here, it's time to go. He gets shot with a laser beam. He's gone. The bridge disappears. Everything goes into lockdown, right? So now they're stuck in there. Okay. No communications with the ship, none of that kind of stuff. Now they need to investigate. Oh, I'm sorry, before all of that happened, Bishop, he ends up touching this artifact that was on one of the dead people with his bare hands for some strange reason. Go to look inside of it. It explodes, burns out this dude's eyes. Man, they showed it, just empty eye sockets, right? Okay. They end up beaming him up to the ship, and Benga puts on this like medical visor thing that's supposed to regenerate his ocular things, right? But for some reason, it's not working. Mystery deepens. Okay, now we go back to everybody getting locked up inside this temple, right? The reporter dude, okay. So he ends up showing them the footage like, yo, it's a whole nother room with this statue over there and everything like that. What if we go through this? What if we go through it? Because we can't go out. One is no bridge and we don't want to get lasered, right? We should, take our chances going through this other room, or we risk starving to death like these other dudes did, right? So they go through. And here's where it gets even more interesting. When they emerge, they're all in couples, right? They're all in twos. So now you have Uhura and Ortega's brother. You have Spock and Corby, and you have you have Spock and La'an, and you have Corby and Nurse Chapel. All right, they're all in like different rooms of how it appears, right? Chapel and Corby is in a room. No, Spock and La'an is in a room that has a statue, which they find out is in some kind of flux, dimensional flux, and is a life form. And I like the way La'an immediately pulls a phaser out on it. Anyway, long story short, come to find, I'm getting ahead of myself. Spock ends up being like, yo, I found this visor, I'm put it on, and he looks at the pedestal, he looks in it, and there's all these little things in these, same orbs but glowing that Bishop has seen, like a lot of them, right? And so when one of them floats up, right, it floats up, and without these visors, this like artifact visors, you can't see it, right? So Corby has no idea what Spock is looking at. So the ball turns around, and inside the ball is this thing, this like monster thing, right? And the first thought I had was, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on with this, right? What's going on with this? So, all right. Mbenga is scanning Bishop because Bishop is starting to act strange. Kind of find out Bishop is dead, right? He has no brain activity. He's dead, but he's still talking to everybody, right? And then he starts switching back and forth between asking Mbenga about his daughter. Remember Mbenga's daughter from season 1, right? Asking Mbenga about his daughter, which Bishop should know about, and then how his daughter extended, and then all this kind of stuff, right? And Mbenga is like, yo, who am I talking to? And it's cool. Mbenga, kind of understood, hey, I'm talking to something else. I'm talking to a different entity, right? And then he kept switching back and forth. Now, the thing is that the Bishop ends up becoming the Event Horizon dude, the villain from Event Horizon, right? With the whole eye sockets running around being creepy freaky, right? First vibe I got was, Oh, we got Star Trek Event Horizon, right? But anyway, lo and behold, Captain Patel comes into the sick bay, right? She, for some treatment. She sees Bishop and immediately goes into straight up Gorn type stuff, man. Get on agile ninja, man, flipping around and threw Mbenga up against the wall, man. He knocked out all everywhere, all super quick, which is strange to me because Mbenga, he kind of a warrior, so we'll assume she threw him kind of hard, right? So they get to fighting because of, apparently they recognize each other because this being is ancient. Kind of find out all this being called the Vesda life form is super ancient, right? And this place is a prison, this temple, and it's meant to house them in it. All right. And this temple is a paradox of times, which reminded me of Doctor Who in the episode where he's fighting the devil. But never mind all that. There's a whole lot of elements. This is a composite episode of a good episode of Star Trek. But anyway, right? So Captain Patel and they get into a fight. They get into a good fight. The Vesda life form handling her. She jumping around doing flips off of the sick bed tables, man, walls and stuff, right? And stuff. And then the security come in, man. Okay, security is always kind of worthless. I don't know how they guard the ship, how people feel safe on the ship, because security always get their butt kicked by pretty much everybody that invades the ship, right? But anyway, the doctor sneaks up behind Patel, knocks her out with a hypo spray because that's, classic, Starfleet doctor maneuver right there. Don't never turn your back on the Starfleet doctor. You will get a hypo spray to the neck. So anyway, and of course Bishop runs off, being Event Horizon dude, right? So Mbenga talks him. Bishop ends up getting one of the security guards, man, hostage with the face to his head. The other, security dude, got the face of Mbenga, come talk him down. They throw him inside the brig, right? Now, the thing is, not Allurian, what's her name? Okay, right. The chief engineer, remember, she's old too. She gets a feeling of evil from this thing, right? And she's like, yo, I know this thing is ancient, like super ancient, and it's evil, right? But anyway, Bishop ends up talking to the security that's guarding the force field of the brig, right? And of course, Bishop sticks his hand through the force field, breaks the dude's neck, walk out. And right now they gotta, he's on his way to try to take over the ship because what does evil need with a starship? But that's besides the point. Anyway, they get up inside there, man. They got everybody. They got Scotty, the chief engineer lady, man. They all up in the engineering, man. And he's like, yo, give me the code. He end up getting shot by her, dying. The beam ends up, floating up. Scotty beams it into nowhere, into the buffer somewhere, into the battery. But he should have beamed it into space. I don't know why he didn't. Oh, right, because it's a non-corporeal evil entity. You probably don't want to do that. Anywho, Spock and all them ends up getting out the temple because they, like I said, it's a paradox, right? So they end up, Spock ends up putting two together, ends up enlists Nurse Chapel's faith in him to walk across the beam. Everybody gets out, and they find out that all these things is evil in their brief. Now, that was the episode. Now, how did I enjoy the episode? I thought this episode was great. There's been several episodes in Star Trek canon that had a horror base. One of the ones I could think of was when everybody started de-evolving. What is that called? Degeneration or something like that. Where everybody started de-evolving to primitive evolutionary species of their worlds in, the next generation. That's one of those episodes, right? And this is one of those episodes. But the special thing about this, oh, by the way, when they beamed the entity that weren't whatever that looking thing was into space or into the buffers, the first thing I thought was, all right, transdimensional beings look like worms. Is these those things that inhabited the transporter realm, right? And then I was like, no, man, it was just how people was viewing them while they was in the matter stream. But this introduces a new race, a new villain, a new a new evil into Star Trek canon, and that is the Vesda life form. And from the end of the episode, how the information on the Vesdans switched and turned into Vestan language and then switched back, right, leads me to believe that this is not going to be their end. That being said, we know that the Vesdan life form doesn't exist in TOS, TNG, DS9, Voyager, or anything like that, right? So they may be able to not only bring this species back in Strange New Worlds, but in Starfleet Academy in some kind of extended way. But thank you guys for watching this episode. The video went a little longer than I hope, but if let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this episode. If you thought that it strayed too much from Star Trek, technology and the aspect of science and everything like that, or if it's straying too much into the relationships or into too much of the old evil good, let me know in the comments. Or if you just truly enjoyed the episode, man, think season 3 is kicking butts, leave that in the comments too. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace, recycle, and say the whales. You guys be cool.